All right, trainers, welcome to another deep dive. And let me tell you, today we're catching a big one, Pokémon, the first movie. But we're not just going to rehash the plot. This is about going deeper. Thanks to that awesome video essay you sent, we're going philosophical.
Yeah, philosophical.
Yeah.
So anyone who needs a refresher, Pokémon. The first movie, we've got Mewtwo, this superpowered Pokémon, cloned from the mythical Mew, and right off the bat, he's got some serious existential angst.
And that's where things get really interesting. See,
Yeah.
what you might mistake for typical villain backstory, it's actually diving headfirst into some heavy existentialism.
Existential what now?
It's a mouthful, right?
Yeah.
Basically, it's all about those big questions. Why are we here? What's the point of it all? The stuff Mewtwo starts grappling with the second he's created in that lab.
So not just who am I, but why am I?
Exactly. And the video essay really hits on this. It's not just confusion, it's this anger, this feeling of being used. Mewtwo didn't ask to be made. He was instantly a tool, somebody else's science experiment.
Yeah, you really feel that moment when he's just screaming, why am I here?
Right. It's like all this power, but no control. And the
Yeah.
essay points to this quote about existence preceding essence. It's key.
Hold on, existence preceding. What's that now?
So it's like this Mewtwo is not just a Pokemon figuring out if he likes berries or whatever. He's questioned the very core of his being. It's deep stuff.
Wow, okay. So we're already down a philosophical rabbit hole with this one. It makes you think, right? Like, how much of who we are is our own choice and how much is just, I don't know, decided for us?
And it gets even more complex because the film throws cloning into the mix. Now, it's not just that Mewtwo exists, but that he's a copy. And that raises a whole other question. Is a copy inherently less valuable, less real than the original?
Which he obviously has some feelings about, considering he goes and makes a whole clone army.
Right, and he's claiming they're superior. It's like he's overcompensating for something there.
Definitely some deep-seated issues at play there. But so, is the movie saying clones aren't as real?
It's tricky. The video essay even says the film doesn't give us easy answers, but it wants us to wrestle with it. What does make us real? Is it where we come from, the experiences that shape us? What do you think?
I'm going to need a minute to process that one.
And we're just getting started. This whole real or replica thing, it goes even deeper when we consider Mewtwo's personality compared to Mew himself.
So, before the break, clones, originals, what makes us real heavy stuff. But Pokémon, the first movie doesn't stop there. It's like the writers took a philosophy course and were like, let's throw it all in.
Right. And the video essay you sent, it picks up on this too, especially with how the film contrasts Mewtwo and Mew. Like here you've got these two Pokemon genetically identical, but their personalities, total opposites.
Talk about a nature versus nurture case study, huh?
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting from a philosophical standpoint. Because if they're basically the same stuff, how they end up so different.
Yeah, it's like one's this brooding, angsty ball of psychic energy ready to take over the world, and the other is, well, basically a pink flying marshmallow.
Right, so what's the deal? And the film definitely seems to lean towards nurture as the big factor here, especially for Mewtwo.
Yeah, I mean, you see his childhood, and it's basically a horror show. Born in a lab, treated like an experiment. No wonder he's got issues.
The video essay makes a really good point about this.
Yeah.
It emphasizes how those early experiences, that lack of agency, it all feeds into his rage.
Oh, totally. It's like he's never allowed to just be. It's all, you're this, you're for this. That'll mess anyone up.
Absolutely. And then you've got Mew, presumably developing out in the world, free to explore, interact on his own terms. That difference in experience, that's huge.
And this you think, like how much of who we are is because of our environment? Who would we be if we'd been raised differently?
I'm a Mander, right?
Yeah.
Are we just products of our genes? Or is it more about the experiences we have? The good, the bad, all of it.
And with Mewtwo, it's almost like those early negative experiences, they kind of blinded him. He's got so much potential, but he's stuck in that anger and pain.
Which actually brings us to what the video essay calls the heart of the film's philosophy, nihilism.
Nihilism, isn't that like nothing matters and all that? Pretty bleak.
It is bleak. And at the start, Mewtwo's definitely leaning into that. He sees himself as this mistake, this abomination. It's like his entire worldview is filtered through that lens.
And then along comes Ash, full of sunshine and hope, like always.
And this is where the film gets really clever, because it sets up this clash between Mewtwo's nihilism and Ash's almost naive belief in the inherent good of, well, everything.
So it's not about who's right or wrong, but these two totally different ways of seeing the world.
Exactly. And it forces Mewtwo to confront his own beliefs. Remember how we were talking about existence preceding essence? Well, the video essay argues that Mewtwo choosing to spare Ash, that's him taking control of his essence. He's making a choice.
So it's not just, why am I here? It's, what am I going to do now that I'm here?
Exactly. He's not just questioning his existence anymore. He's choosing what kind of existence he wants to have. Pretty powerful stuff for a Pokemon movie.
That's an understatement. But I gotta ask, if Mewtwo's figuring out his whole meaning of life thing, what about everyone else? Like, what's the message for the rest of us?
Well, for that, we need to look at one more big idea. The film tackles the other. And trust me, this is where things get really interesting. But first, we got to take a quick break.
And we're back. All right, so Pokémon, the first movie, it's got us questioning our existence, the nature of reality, all that fun stuff. But there was one more big idea from that video essay you sent, right? Something about the other.
This is where the film really goes beyond just Pokemon, I think. It uses that whole conflict, originals versus clones, as this metaphor for prejudice, discrimination.
Yeah.
All those not-so-fun things in the real world.
Okay, so break that down for me. What's the other mean in this context?
Basically, it's about this idea of us versus them. Like
Yeah.
you see it all the time, right? Creating these artificial divisions and then using those differences to justify all sorts of, well, bad behavior.
And Mewtwo's got that in spades.
Right. He's all about us versus them. The essay even calls him out on it. He sees the original Pokemon as a threat, less deserving, just because they were born differently.
Which, kind of hypocritical when you think about it. He's a clone himself.
Exactly. And the film doesn't shy away from that. If anything, it highlights how ridiculous that kind of prejudice is. Like, it's showing us difference doesn't have to equal conflict. That real unity comes from recognizing everyone's got value. Doesn't matter where you came from.
Kind of a big message for a movie that's also got this giant Pokemon battle happening.
And that's the brilliance of it. Because, yeah, there's all this action, but then it's also saying, hey, sometimes the real battles, they're fought with empathy, with understanding, not just these big, flashy powers.
So it's not about who's stronger, but about, like, breaking down those walls we build between each other.
Right. The essay even says the climax. It's not about which side wins, but about realizing both sides, they're capable of all the same things. Joy, sadness, connection, life.
Wow. So we've gone from why am I here to we're all in this together. Deep stuff.
See? Pokemon. It's not just for kids.
Definitely not. Though I might have to go rewatch it with, like, a philosophy dictionary on hand next time.
I think we all learned something today.
That's what deep dives are for. But seriously, huge thanks to you for, guiding us through all this. And, of course, to you listening for sending in that awesome video essay. This whole conversation wouldn't have happened without you.
Always a pleasure to dive deep into these ideas.
And hey, if anyone ever tells you Pokemon's just for kids, you hit them with this episode. All right, trainers, that's it for this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious,